Hi Steve fans and welcome back to the channel. Boat diving or shore diving? Which is a preferred option is a question I get asked many times. And there are pros and cons to both forms of diving. So in this video, we'll have a look at both and you can decide which works best for you. But it's not as clear cut as you might think and often depends on your location. What works in one place won't necessarily work in another. If you haven't been here before, my name's Mark. I'm the Editor-in-Chief of the Scuba Diver media brand, and a warm welcome to the Scuba Diver YouTube channel. Before we get into the video itself, take 2 seconds, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future content, and ring that bell so that you get notification of the latest releases. Check out the description below for all sorts of free goodies. Everyone likes something for nothing, so you can get a free digital subscription to any of our magazines. Where we can, we'll link you to the destinations that we talk about in the support our channel section in the description. For transparency, we'll earn a small commission each time you purchase after clicking on one of our links, and this will go directly back into making more content for you to enjoy. Now, let's dive into the video. Shore diving or boat diving, which is better? Well, there's no straightforward answer to that one, to be honest. I find it's all down to where you are in the world and where you happen to be diving. In some instances, boat diving might not be even on the cards, so shore diving it is. Whereas in other places, the site might not be accessible from land and you have to use a boat to get there. But let's consider a destination where you can opt to boat dive or shore dive. Somewhere like Bonaire, for example. This tiny Caribbean island is often referred to as the shore diving capital of the world, and it does have a plethora of sites that are easily accessible from the shore, including a world-class shipwreck in the Hilmer Hooker. However, you can also hit many of these sites via a boat, and there are also a selection of dive sites on the nearby Klein Bonaire that can only be accessed by boat. So, why choose one over the other? Well, let's start with the pros of shore diving. One of the main benefits of going for a shore dive is that you can set your own timetable. If you're just diving with your buddy or your own group. If you're diving from the shore with a guide, like you do in Malta, then you will still be sticking to a schedule decided by the dive centre. But let's say it's just you and your buddy. You can choose where and when to dive, and crucially, for how long. Want to lie in and kick off your diving mid-morning? No problem. Suddenly got the urge to go for a night dive after your dinner? Go right ahead. And you have complete control over what you do in the water. You might have a plan to swim along the reef for 30 minutes and then turn around for the return journey. But once you're in the water, you might come across something unexpected, like mating frogfish or dueling nudibranchs. You could opt to just stay in this one location for the duration of your dive and watch the action. You aren't having to keep up with a guide. This is why many photographers like to dive from the shore in this way. As a photographer myself, I know there is nothing worse than trying to take shots as part of a group. Even if you hang at the rear, you're always going to feel the pressure to keep one eye on the guide and not hold up the group with your activities. If it's just you and your buddy, you can take your time over your photographs with no external worries. Another benefit of shore diving is that you aren't on a boat, which if you suffer from seasickness can be a very good thing. There is nothing worse than being on a dive boat and wishing you were back ashore as the waves of nausea pass over you. At least when you start and end the dive on terra firma, you've not got that issue to worry about at all. Now you can get around this issue by taking medication, but then you have to make sure that it does not cause problems for diving, so check the labels. Shore diving can also be a great way to build confidence as a newly qualified dive team. A buddy team fresh out of their entry-level classes can safely do shallow, sheltered shore dives that they plan and execute themselves and then gradually expand their horizons as their confidence and skills increase. That's not to say that shore dives are just for beginners or even experienced recreational divers. There are places where you can access deep water close to shore, which means that technical divers can get their depth fix without having to board a boat. At sites like Middle Finger on Gozo in the Mediterranean, you can find depths of over 300 feet within a short distance of the entry point. Again, all the plus points of having your own schedule equally apply to technical divers too. Finally, shore diving is often a cheaper option than boat diving. If you're diving in your own country with all your own gear, then a shore dive could literally cost you just the price of a gas fill. But even on Bonaire, a shore diving package is cheaper than a boat diving package over the same timescale. Right, the cons of shore diving. Well, first off, you have to walk with your gear on to the entry point into the water. Now on our example island of Bonaire, many of these are located not too far from where you park your pickup truck. However, at many places you have to contend with walking into the water over loose and uneven coral rubble, which if you are not that steady on your feet, for whatever reason, can be quite a challenge. On Malta, you'll be required to walk much longer distances to get to the water, and in some cases over rough iron shore. You'll need sturdy dive boots and be capable of walking wearing your full dive kit for sometimes hundreds of feet. This can obviously rule out a lot of people who are just not up to the task for a multitude of reasons. Getting in is one thing. It normally just involves walking into the water, or maybe a giant stride, but remember, you have to get back out again. It might just be a case of taking off your fins in the shallows and walking out on a sandy beach, but in many instances you might need to climb up a ladder. Not too big a chore, it's much the same as getting back on a boat, but in other cases you might have to scramble back up rocks, which is a much more daunting challenge. If you're a technical diver going from shore, this is obviously even more of an issue, as you'll be carrying multiple cylinders or even a closed circuit rebreather. If you are going tech diving from the shore, in many cases you need to be seriously fit for obvious reasons. Shore diving does open you up to being at the mercy of the tide with no boat cover. Off the likes of Bonaire, this isn't really an issue, but in other places, such as off the coast of Anglesey in North Wales, you need to consider where you're diving a bit more carefully. Some sheltered bays can be dived at any time and in almost any conditions, but others are subject to tidal changes. There have been numerous rescues of divers who went in for a shore dive, ventured a little too far outside the protection of a bay and were whisked out to sea by the tide. So, if you're doing diving somewhere that is subject to tides, talk to the local dive centre and get some sage advice before you head off into the water. It's far better to be safe than sorry. Many times when you're shore diving, you'll be in close proximity to other water users, from swimmers, kayakers and paddleboarders to jet skis, sailing dinghies and motorboats. So it's vital in these instances you let them know where you are. This means you need to haul an SMB around with you, which can be a royal pain in the rear, especially if you're taking photographs. So to avoid this, choose locations where there are not that many other people. Let's move on to boat diving. The big plus for boat diving is it's dead easy, especially if you're on a hard boat. You get on the boat at a dock, you set your dive gear up, and when it comes time to dive, you put it on, walk maybe 10 feet, and then giant stride into the water. At the end of the dive, you climb back up a ladder, and you've got that epic 10 feet walk back to your seat. If you're diving from a rib or any other type of small boat, it might be more labour intensive, shall we say. You'll often either travel out to the dive site with your kit on your back, if it's close by, or have to don it once you're at the location. Now, getting into dive kit in a rib is more of a faff than on a big hard boat, but work with your buddy and it isn't too hard. The best thing is that once you are kitted up and ready to dive, getting into the water literally involves just falling backwards off the boat. Technical divers often prefer boat diving over shore diving for this very reason. When you are loaded up with a rebreather and bailout cylinders, or a twin set in stages, it is much easier to just shuffle a few feet to the side of the boat and fall in rather than face an epic trek to the dive site entry point. With more and more boats now having diver lifts, getting back onto the vessel at the end of the dive is often even easier too. The other major benefit of boat diving is that it can deliver you to sites that are not accessible from the shore. On Bonaire, while most of the mainland sites can be dived by boat or from the shore, if you want to experience the sublime reefs around a small nearby island of Klein Bonaire, you have to do it from a boat. There's no option. In many locations, all of the dive sites are only accessible via boat. So even if you are the biggest shore diving fanatic, if you want to dive, you're going to have to get on that boat. Remember I said that photographers love shore diving because it gives them freedom to take their time and not be playing catch up with a guide? Well, some liveaboards have got that issue covered. On the Aquacat in the Bahamas, once the boat is moored up at a dive site and you've listened to the briefing, you can opt to follow a guide, or you can head off with your buddy and go it alone, just the same as you would on a shore dive. Likewise, in the Red Sea, some of the boats operate an open deck policy on certain charters, where buddy teams can come and go by themselves with no real constraints. On to the cons of boat diving. Well, we mentioned one of the main ones before: seasickness. I remember feeling desperately sorry for two young backpackers in South Africa who excitedly boarded our boat to go cage diving with great white sharks. Alas, they were lying prone on the deck before we'd even left the dock, and went progressively greener as the day progressed, especially once we hit the big rolling swells of the open ocean. If you don't suffer from seasickness, be extremely thankful. There are a multitude of drugs available to combat seasickness, but some rule out diving when taking them, so do your research carefully. When you're dayboat diving, you will be working to the dive centre's strict schedule. They need to know exactly when the boats are going out and when they're coming back to be able to plan different trips, fill cylinders, fuel the boats up and more. So you have to be on time for when the boat leaves. No lie-ins for you, unless you opt to forego a morning dive and you wait until the afternoon session. Likewise, on moored stave boats, you will be following a dive guide, which, as mentioned before, can be frustrating for photographers in particular. But even experienced divers who are just not taking shots and are just on a dive can get fed up with this whole follow the leader approach, especially if dive times are cut short and you still have plenty of gas left in your tank and no deco limit on your computer. It's worth checking with the dive centre what the state of play is with the dive guides and dive profiles and times before you get on the boat to avoid disappointment. As said before, diving from a boat carries inherently more associated costs than shore diving, so you'll be paying more to go diving from a boat. If you are on a tight budget when selecting your next destination, this is something worth considering. So, shore diving or boat diving? Which do you prefer and why? Leave your comments below, and if you've got a question, fire away, because if we can't answer it, maybe someone in our growing community will be able to. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out our ever-growing playlist for more educational and inspirational videos. As always, stay safe, and if you're going diving from the shore or via a boat, enjoy.